Hey guys, it's LSuperSonicQ here, and today I'm going to show you guys how to sculpt a creeper from Minecraft out of clay. Now, this tutorial is actually probably one of the most difficult I've ever done, which is really ironic because you'd think a creeper is, much easier than Shulk or Samus. So, I'm going to conduct this a little bit differently, and I'm going to show you guys the 3 different ways that you could sculpt this, starting with the most advanced. So this is the most advanced way, and it requires using these decals. Now, 2 of the 3 ways I have to show today use the decals, but this one is the hardest because we're going to be sculpting around them. Now, what I mean by that is, as you see, I'm taking the clay here, I'm rolling it into a circle, but now I'm taking the pieces of paper, and I'm essentially going to put it on the clay, and then kind of push down and kind of form, the square, the cube of his head around the paper. Now, why this is so difficult is because as you start to get more and more, pieces of paper on there, it can be really hard to kind of keep everything all together, and, they can fall off and stuff. It creates a nicer effect, in my opinion. It's a lot more compact, a lot more, squarish, but it is very hard to get those shapes in general. Not to mention, another problem is that as you push the clay and stuff, it can become deformed on one end as opposed to another end, so it's very hard to keep consistent as well. So if you're feeling up to it, this is the most advanced way that I have to sculpt this, and I should note that as you get further down the model, it does get harder and harder because, it's not just the square of the head. You have to kind of do the long body and, his short legs and stuff, so this is the most advanced way. So this is an intermediate level of difficulty. Now I have all my pieces cut out here, however I have the framework of the body already sculpted. So what I essentially did is sculpted, again, the framework of the body. I went on the computer and found these textures and then sized them after measuring my sculpt. Now the issue with this is that while it's, a lot easier to kind of put, the decals onto the face, the lines aren't as clean, and even if your measurements are a little bit off, you're going to see kind of, the seam lines, and it's not as compact, and depending on how you cut your paper, there could be some paper along the edges and stuff. So this way it doesn't look as nice, but it is a lot easier, and if, you take the time, like as much time as you need to measure correctly, but again, it just depends on how well you measure, how well you sculpt in general, like how good you are at doing the base sculpt, measuring, and then, kind of connecting all the pieces together. And this is the easiest way, and it's simply, once you finish the sculpt, you just take a Sharpie and draw on the face details, because, creepers are green is just the base color, so you could just do that, and it would be a lot easier. So if you just want a creeper just to have and say, I have a creeper that I made, then this is the easiest one. Now, of course, for the intermediate and easy tutorials, you're kind of going to need to sculpt, so let's get into the actual sculpt of the creeper. Okay, so now we're going to take things more to a typical clay perspective. So what I'm going to do is take some green clay and kind of roll it into a circle. And then kind of once it's in the circle shape, I'm going to be pressing down the sides, kind of rotating it so that it creates more like a square shape. Because again, the creepers are completely, made of squares. Now, the one difficult part with this is that, of course, it's going to be hard to kind of get it even on all sides. So once you do it to, roughly what is even on all sides, make sure it's relatively smooth and stuff. We're going to use some clay tools because this is pretty much one of the only ways we're going to actually be able to sculpt this, with our hands, with, tools and stuff to make the sides as flat as we can. And I'm going to cut the sides of the clay. Now you do have to be careful not to, press down on one side too hard or whatever, but essentially once you cut down one side, it's pretty easy. You just rotate it, cut the other side, rotate it, cut the other side, and then after you do that to like all the sides, it'll pretty much kind of form itself into a nice, smooth, relatively even square, much more even than you could have got it just sculpting it with your hands. You can kind of just smooth it out a little bit, but again, the clay tool pretty much did all the work for you. So pretty much if you can do this with relative ease, then the rest of this is really simple because again, the creeper is just all squares. So we're going to do pretty much the same thing except on the body now, so we have to elongate the square a little bit. And even though generally speaking this is going to be more difficult to cut than the head was, we're still going to do pretty much the same thing, just, flatten it down, smooth the sides, just as rough as you can before we take the clay tool and actually start, cutting. The one thing you have to be careful about here, though, is that, like, the head was the same on all sides, but, of course, the body is supposed to be, tall. So when you're cutting the sides and stuff, make sure that you don't accidentally squish the clay down. And if you do, it's okay, just kind of, roll it out a little bit, make it a little bit longer, and you can, of course, use the head for size comparison to make sure that it is the correct size, and then you can go back and adjust accordingly. So after quite a bit of fussing, I finally get it down to what I feel is correct, And we're going to move on to the legs, which is pretty much the last part. I don't want to forget to mention, though, that I do recommend putting a toothpick in to connect the head to the rest of the body, just because it's a part that I feel like would fall off easily if you didn't have some kind of connecting piece. So once again, just the same thing. We're going to start with a circle. We're going to, use our hands to kind of form it into that rough rectangular shape. And then after that, we're going to use the knife to cut it. I'm going to actually put it under the body. And then from there, kind of do the stuff with the knife, kind of, make sure it's the right size and stuff. Don't cut too much off the top either, though. That was a mistake I made. You want to make sure that there's enough clay so that it's kind of tall enough and it's not just these little flat legs. And something else that I almost goofed on is that the legs should be kind of towards the bottom of the body, and there should be space underneath the body. The legs shouldn't be completely connected so that there's no space underneath the body. But with that said, that's pretty much the sculpt of the creeper. Just to recap from here, you can either go the easy route and just draw the eyes on with a Sharpie, or you can measure this, go online, find the texture, and then cut it out and glue it all on. So with that said, guys, that does it for this creeper tutorial. There are 3 different ways for you to try. Thanks for watching as always. I'm LSuperSonicQ, and until the next video, Finn. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the video you just watched. So these are all my channels and all other kinds of social network things. So if you like this video, then you might like some more of my content. The top banner is my main channel, LSuperSonicQ, where I do video game art. The second banner is my vlog channel, where I talk about a bunch of random things. And below is my blog, where I post daily. We do live streams every Friday night on my channel, LSuperSonicQ, and occasionally I post on Twitter. So yeah, thanks for the support, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Finn.